Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pash On Podcast. Let's get started with your host, Brian Pash.
Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another podcast session.
Today's show is entitled The 5 Missing Pieces for Automotive Digital Retailing. And I'm going to share with you observations that should provide immediate opportunities for all automotive retailers who are embracing a new way to sell cars in a remote fashion. As our country starts to reopen, remote retailing strategies will not go away. We will not be going back to the same retail model that has been in place for 30, 40, 50 years. Dealers are realizing they can sell many cars with a smaller staff if they embrace digital retailing. And it's, unfortunate that the automotive community had to face a pandemic to wake up to the realities that their business needs to be more efficient. Labor costs have to be reduced because other areas of the business are not seeing any increase in profits. Margins are down. Labor costs are going up. Insurance costs are going up. Facility costs are going up. And of course, this is no surprise to everyone in the automotive industry. Yet, I spoke to a dealer who was embracing remote retailing, and he said, Brian, I am selling 2 to 3 times more cars per person than I was in my previous retail model. So I do think that dealers are going to be embracing digital retailing in a more committed way. I've talked to a number of digital retailing providers, and their sales team has been overwhelmed with phone calls and signups. In fact, there are so many dealers asking for digital retailing tools to be activated on their website that most companies are just backed up, and they're doing partial installs or delayed or staged installs just to meet the demand. And so that's why I wanted to have this podcast session today to share 5 things that I believe are missing from most digital retailing installations. So first, let me set the stage. Many dealers have had a little experience with remote retailing. Someone has found a used car on their website and they've shipped the car and they've worked out how to handle the paperwork. But when we talk about digital retailing or remote retailing in scale, processes, marketing, merchandising have to change. And when a dealer calls up a digital retailing company, on the most part, they are there to install a checkout system, an online shopping cart, which allows the consumer to estimate their payments, get pre-approved, and value their trade. That's the job of the digital retailing company. Many dealers are expecting the digital retailing company to be a consultant, a coach, to help them with the leadership, the pay plans, the reorganization, the marketing and merchandising. And the truth of the matter is, today, that is not the primary objective of the digital retailing companies. That's why dealers need to carefully listen to this podcast and share it with their colleagues, because I would say 9 out of 10 digital retailing installations that I've inspected are seriously lacking in marketing and merchandising. So let me share the 5 things that we're going to discuss today. The first thing is the importance of calling your digital retailing process something, giving it a name. The second, the need to simplify your website to direct consumers into your digital retailing process. Number 3, your digital retailing solution needs to stand out on your SRPs and VDPs. Number 4, when someone is engaging with a vehicle on your website, we have to engage with them and start a conversation instead of abandoning them and chasing them into BDC. And number 5, we need to communicate and educate the local market about the new way that they have to purchase their next vehicle. So let's get into it. The first of the 5 points I'd like to make is that we need to call our digital retailing process something. And this is really important Because what I see is many dealers putting a button on their website and it's like, personalize your payments. That's all it says. All of the other banners and, well, call to actions on their website are about the current lease incentives or finance incentives. And all of a sudden there's a button that says calculate your payments, and the consumer doesn't really know what's behind that button. Now we know behind that button is an ability to get a price on the vehicle. Maybe it requires you to unlock, the ability to get pre-approved, the ability to value their trade, come up with a more accurate estimate of their payment. But the consumer doesn't know it. Some dealers are using default banners from their digital retailing providers. For example, Roadster calls their platform an express storefront. And I've seen many dealers take the standard Roadster banner and put it on their SRP or VDP, and it just says, buy your next car on our express storefront. That's it. And regardless of where they are, when they click on that banner, it takes them to, well, the starting point of a Roadster experience. But do consumers understand what express storefront means? Because the banners don't explain it. You see, we need to explain or brand for each dealer what that button, that objective, that digital retailing solution is all about. Let me give you an analogy. All of us have purchased things online. Could you imagine if for every product that Amazon had on their website, there were 5 buttons? One button would say, I want this. And then another button would say, enter your billing information. And another button would say, enter your shipping information. And another button would say, oh, gift wrap this. Could you imagine what that product page, or we would call it VDP, would look like on Amazon? It would have 5 or 6 or 7 buttons. The reason why Amazon doesn't do that is because that buy now button, we know what's behind it. We know we're going to be asked for our billing address and our shipping address and which credit card and whether you want it gift wrapped or expedited. You understand? The buy now button has been branded and defined by the e-commerce industry. In automotive, consumers haven't had that same experience on dealer websites. So what I'm suggesting is that you call it something and explain it on your website homepage, on your SRPs, and on your VDPs. For example, maybe you're going to call it FastPass, and the banner should say something like, one click to estimate your payments, calculate the value of your trade, and get pre-approved. Meaning, if it was ABC Toyota FastPass, the banner could say one click and what the digital retailing tool does. So that on the VDP or on the SRP, when it says FastPass on the button, the consumer says, oh, that one button, that will allow me to get my payments, calculate the value of my trade, and get pre-approved. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm setting an expectation that the FastPass button is more than just one thing. Most dealers just put the digital retailing button on, which is something like buy online or calculate your payments. But do you understand? Consumers don't know, they don't have experience with what that button means. I think buy online is a dangerous button, because how many people are ready to buy online without knowing their payments, their trade value, or what credit level or what finance package they got approved for? You see, we can't assume that consumers know what that means because they've never done it before on our website. The second thing, and is really playing into this first requirement of calling your digital retailing process something, and I don't care if you call it Fast Lane or Express Lane or Fast Pass or Express Pass, the key here is that you define what happens when they click that button. And that's why the next piece, simplify your call to action buttons on your website, is so important. Let's go back to the example. Could you imagine if Amazon had the buy now button, which had give me your shipping address, give me your billing address, pick the shipping method, and then underneath on the product page, all those buttons were there again? people would say, what is Amazon doing? Well, when you look at the average dealer's website, they put their digital retailing button on, and then they still leave a button for get pre-approved. They still leave a button for value my trade. And here's the crazy thing. All of the buttons that they leave, for the most part, are things that the digital retailing tool does. And so there's no surprise that consumers don't know which buttons to click and why we're not getting as much traffic through the digital retailing tool. In fact, for some reason, the trade-in companies have done an injustice to car dealers. This seems to be like the biggest joke to me in 2020. I see dealers with 2 or 3 call to action buttons on their VDP for a trade. Yet, in their primary menu structure, there's a menu choice to value my trade. On the home page, there's something value my trade. But here's what I see often. Top of the VDP, trade-in banner. Inside the digital retailing tool, the tool does a trade-in. And then yet there's another banner or button that says value my trade. And some dealers have 2 different trade tools, which give 2 different values. What are we doing? It seems like we're half in to digital retailing, meaning for many dealers, they didn't fully commit to the technology and tool. So they just said, let me check the box. Let me throw another button on my website. Related to this are the 3 or 4 different pop-ups that I'm seeing on dealer websites, which reminds me of the game Whack-A-Mole. Have you ever played that game at a carnival where the little mole pops up and you have to hit it with a hammer? It is amazing lately. Dealers have, re-embraced these abusive, aggravating pop-ups. One dealer, who I did a review of their whole website merchandising, was surprised when I reviewed the website with her. She said, man, I thought we took off those tools. Literally, every 2 to 3 minutes, something else would be popping up. You can't find another retail experience that is like that outside of automotive. It is ridiculous that the dealer has a banner for trade, a button for trade built into their digital retailing tool, and then there's a pop-up that's saying, hey, you want to know the trade? And you say, Brian, well, it gets me leads. Your job is to sell cars, not to aggravate your consumers. But Brian, leads give me appointments, and appointments help me sell cars. Yes, but why not simplify your website and get people through the tool that will give them all the information that they need that also supports your brand promise of making it easier for someone to buy a car? We need to stop putting buttons on our website that says, ask us a question, if there's a chat bar that's on every page that says, chat or text with us. We have to stop duplicating buttons on our SRPs and VDPs. This seems to be a national problem. The third thing is to make your digital retailing solution stand out. And I use some basic design principles, and I'm not a graphic designer, but I love to study graphic design. And when you look at conversion optimization, on the dealer's SRP and VDP, the digital retailing button should be a color violator. What do I mean by that? If your website is primarily red, like a Toyota dealer, then your digital retailing button on the SRP or VDP should be green. If you have a green website, and I haven't seen too many websites that are green, we still wouldn't use green as the color violator because it would match the set. We'd probably pick the color red. What I see is so many dealer websites with the button stack being all the same color. So it's a blue website and all the buttons are blue. Or it's a black and gray website and all the buttons are black. Hello? Follow best practice for conversion optimization. You should only have one primary call to action on your SRP and VDP. And that should be to take the person into your digital retailing solution. Go out and check 10 different dealer websites and you'll see what I mean. They'll have all the same color buttons, or maybe all the buttons are black and they'll have 3 red buttons. Hello, why 3 red buttons? Oh, that's because one button says calculate payments, the other button says value your trade, the other button says get pre-approved. They all go to the same tool. Hello? That's not what I'm talking about. One button. But Brian, we need to put value your trade and calculate your payments and get pre-approved. Why? Because they don't know that our button does that. Oh, but that brings us back to point number one. If you called at something, Newton Nissan FastPass, the fastest way to buy your next car. One click allows you to calculate your payments, estimate your trade, and get pre-approved. Well, if you called at something and told consumers what it is, well, then that button will be like the Amazon Buy Now button. The fourth strategy that most dealers miss is that they should be engaging consumers, not chasing them in 2020. You see, the top chat companies in automotive have responded to a challenge that I made last year at the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference, which was to provide a way when a consumer did click on a button other than the digital retailing start, that the dealer could have a conversation with them. My recommendation in general is that a dealer's VDP would have 3 buttons, just 3. One button, which would stand out, which would start their digital retailing tool, a second button to schedule a test drive, and the third button to ask any other question. That schedule a test drive and ask a question should not go to a form. When a consumer has a question on your website, you should be talking with them. Imagine walking into your showroom and being greeted by the receptionist. Oh, why are you here? Oh, I'm here to check out a car. I'm interested in buying it. I just have a few questions. Could you imagine the impression of the consumer when the receptionist says, please sit down in the chair. Somebody in the next few hours will get back to you. Now you may laugh and say, Brian, that's so silly. We would see that person within a few minutes, even on a busy day. Well, of course you would, because you built your business to do that, to serve, not abandon. Yet on the website, someone comes in and has a question about the price of a vehicle or the features of a vehicle, and you pop up a form and basically say, someone will get back to you sometime in the future. Thank you and goodbye. How about changing those buttons to conversations? You can see some amazing examples of companies like Gubagoo, CarNow, LivePerson, Dealer Inspire Conversations, all invested in the technology using some automation and some live people to create a conversational commerce experience on the dealer's website. When you do it right, now listen, you double real sales opportunities. How many times has your BDC received a lead to unlock a price that it says like, shove it in your hat at gmail.com or I'm not talking to you at gmail.com. And we can all chuckle when we see those leads come into the CRM, but it's basically the consumer screaming, I know your game and I got what I wanted, the unlocked price, but you got nothing for me. When you move CTA buttons outside of your digital retailing to conversations, you can double the number of sales opportunities, even with map pricing. Even when your dealer principal or general manager says, we have to unlock that price. I don't want anybody to see our price. That's fine. Turn the unlock price into a conversation. The last point of the 5 things that are missing from most digital retailing strategies is communicating and educating the local market. You see, the first 4 are things that should change on the dealer's website. We need to call it something. We need to simplify our call to action buttons. We need to make our digital retailing button stand out. And any other buttons should engage instead of chasing in the BDC. But then, how do we get more consumers to know about this new process? It's not Field of Dreams, build it and he will come. You need to have a clear marketing message. And nothing communicates digital retailing better than video, because videos can show the consumer exactly what your process is. You see, most consumers know that buying a car requires a visit to the dealership. Today, with social distancing, dealers have reinvented themselves, and some did it before the COVID crisis. But consumers need to know that there are options. How many people have leases that came up in March or April that they're still holding on to that car? How many people have had job changes that requires them to be in a different car? This is the perfect time to develop your marketing message. And of course, if we go back to point number one, it's so much easier to market it if you've called it something. And that's why these 5 things work in conjunction with each other. A good marketing message in video. And when I say in video, I'm talking about on YouTube pre-roll, and I'm talking about Facebook video and linear addressable cable and OTT. When you have an omni-channel video message that says, Newton Nissan Fast Pass, the fastest and easiest way to buy your next car, and you show them what that means, when somebody comes to your website and sees the Fast Pass button, then they understand, oh, this is the new way to buy a car. So many dealers, when I look at their websites, haven't named it, haven't merchandised it, it doesn't stand out, and then they say, well, digital retailing isn't really working. And I'm like, well, that's no surprise, because you've just provided new ways to buy a car and no one knows about it. The only way they're going to find about it is that if they stumble onto your website, and since you haven't called it anything, since you haven't made it stand out, well, there's probably a 50-50 chance that they don't even engage with the tool. I'm not faulting the digital retailing companies that they haven't helped dealers with these 5 areas because they're not equipped, or that maybe that's not even their specialty or vision for the company. I had a great webinar the other day with Joe St. John from AutoFi, and here's what he said: Brian, we are focused on providing the best checkout experience. We need help from people just like you to help dealers with their marketing and merchandising. Now you could say, well, shouldn't my website company help me with this? Well, for the most part, the website companies are afraid to stand up to dealers. How do I know that? Most website companies would and will allow dealers to have 8, 9, 10 call to action buttons on their VDP and add 2 or 3 different trade tools or pop-ups that look like whack-a-mole games. They don't have the backbone to stand up to dealers and say, hey, this is really hurting your optimization of the customer experience. So at the end, the buck stops with the dealer principal, with the general manager. These 5 areas are critical for digital retailing to work. Now there's some good news. I've been working for the last 2 years on a road trip, working with some OEM projects and some dealer group projects to create a better marketing and merchandising strategy for dealers who want to embrace modern retail. Of course, prior to COVID, the amount of dealers who wanted to embrace digital retailing was relatively small. Now it's very large. So my brother Glenn and I put together a digital retailing coaching package. It's a 60-day process where we help develop the modern brand promise and calling the digital retailing experience something that will stand out in the local market, defining what the brand promise means to the local consumers, helping them build the banners and the marketing materials, merchandising their websites, simplifying the call to actions, moving from forms to conversations, everything I talked about in today's podcast. Dealers who are interested in learning more about that can just go to brianpash.com/digital retailing, and there's a page and a video that describes that. There are many dealers who don't need to hire a consultant to accomplish the 5 things that I shared in this podcast today. And for those who have internal teams, who have a clear vision, who understand what I shared today, it's important that you move quickly to update your website to move towards conversational commerce in a remote retailing world. But there are many dealers say, Brian, we don't have the resources. We're not set up to do what you're suggesting. We need some help. Well, that's why Glenn and I put together the consulting program. We are digital retailing platform agnostic. We do not care which tool the dealer uses. We just want to make sure that the marketing, merchandising, and customer experience is as seamless and frictionless as possible. So today, look at your website with a different set of eyes. Have you called your digital retailing experience something very clearly on your website other than the default name? Have you simplified your SRPs and VDPs to eliminate duplicates, Does your digital retailing button, your CTA button, stand out? Are all other CTA buttons on your websites moving the conversations, not forums? And do you have an omni-channel video strategy to educate consumers that there's a new way to buy a car online? These are the 5 points that most dealers are missing, and I hope that you found today's podcast helpful. Just want to give you a heads up, in July 12th, 13th, and 14th, the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference will be held in the Napa Valley. It was originally supposed to be scheduled in May. I am so excited about this conference because we are going to be bringing all the top digital retailing providers and dealers who have done an outstanding job during the COVID crisis of remote retailing. Glenn and I are going to be doing a bonus full-day workshop the day before the conference on Saturday, the 11th. I'm going to be doing a full-day workshop on marketing and merchandising. Glenn's going to be doing a full-day workshop on sales process and communication. And then the conference starts on Sunday afternoon. But here's the most exciting thing. Dealers are now very, very much interested in how to transform their dealership, how to make the most out of remote retailing tools. And this is the conference to focus on those best case success stories. So go to digitalmarketingstrategies.org, get your team signed up. It's going to be an amazing conference. And by July, we're all going to need to get out of the house, out of the dealership, and have a glass of wine and celebrate the transformation of automotive retail. This was the shot in the arm that our industry needed, and I'm excited about the future of automotive retail sales. Will there be challenges? Absolutely. But the 5 things that I shared today are part of the solution set of being a successful retailer in a modern age. If this is the first time you've heard this podcast, well, you should know that every Monday I publish a new podcast, often speaking with industry leaders. So take a look at my podcast library. There are dozens and dozens of interviews with industry leaders. You can find them on the Apple Podcast channel, Google Play Store, SoundCloud, or at brianpash.libsyn. That's LIBSYN.com. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. Share this podcast with other colleagues in your 20 groups or industry groups, and I look forward to seeing progressive retailers at the Digital Marketing Strategies Conference, July 12th, 13th, and 14th in the beautiful Napa Valley. Have a great day.